In the beginning, this TourBox Elite, I almost returned it. And it's not because it was bad. It's because I realized something that tools like this, they don't just make you faster, they reward you after you commit to learning how to use them. If you are somebody who edits video and audio regularly and you use creative software daily like I do, then you are probably going to care about this. So let's go over some things. And I am going to share a couple of stories in here that I think will help you to kind of get into the right frame of mind to decide whether or not this thing is for you. But more importantly, I think it's going to give you a unique perspective on this thing and give you some useful information that you can use to better your career. This thing is a kind of a macro controller. It has a bunch of buttons that you program. For more tech tips on coding and how shit works, don't follow me because I have no idea. But what I do know is that it works really well. So I use this for Premiere Pro. I use it for CapCut. And I even use it in Pro Tools and Studio One as like a scrub wheel for like my recording studio. So that's pretty neat too. So what I'm able to do with this is I'm able to go through and I can use this to scrub through footage, audition footage, insert footage in and out on clips. I can make cuts. I can click play. All kinds of stuff. I can even go through and turn this into like color mode, and this becomes my color wheels. And then this lets me like go between each setting, like shadows, highlights, midtones, stuff like that. So what I found is that this is really cool. I found that when building like travel videos, especially where I just have so many clips to audition, like for example, we recently edited a video on my mom's trip when she came to Thailand in 2022. And I was able to just kind of sit back, sit in my chair and hold this like a video game controller and just go through and cut and audition footage and look at the next clip and be like, okay, this is an endpoint, this is an out point, drop it on the timeline. And it made like kind of what would you call it, assembling the footage a lot of fun. So that I really like. I'm a big fan of figuring out these shortcuts and controls on things in order to save time, because when you do things that way, it's the fastest way to give yourself a raise. And I'll tell you two stories. The first is back when I worked in title insurance. I got my first title insurance job in 2006, right after I graduated high school. I worked at a place called Land Pro, and this place was full of people who were about, I want to say 35 to 50 years old. And at the time, I'm dating myself, I was 19, maybe 18 years old, 18, 19 years old. So I had grown up with a computer. I used a computer so much. I played piano and guitar, so like my typing speed was ridiculous. And what I've always found is that if you can find the shortcut to do something, that time will add up in order to save you a ton of time in the long run. So it's actually, when you're self-employed, one of the easiest ways to give yourself a raise. So what I noticed was a lot of the older people there just weren't using shortcuts. They were dragging the mouse, edit, copy, clicking the mouse, edit, paste, right? Really basic juvenile stuff. Now, to their credit, they didn't grow up with computers, so they really didn't know. But that was the first time I became hyper aware of, oh, I can do something in 20 minutes that takes someone else 3 hours. Therefore, I'm worth more. And that gave me leverage at that job in order to negotiate the craziest deal I've ever had in employment, which is I was quitting because I wanted to chase my music full time. I ended up sitting them down and saying, listen, so like I want to quit because I want to go all in on my music and I'm just like not feeling really good about where I am. Like I decided not to go to college. So I really want to go all in my music and I'm working full time here. And they ended up saying, you're the fastest typist we have. So what if we just tell you that you can clock in when you want, you can clock out when you want, you can work when you want, and like we don't care. We'll keep your rate the same. Like we'll pay you your hourly rate. If you want to work for an hour, come in and work for an hour. If you don't want to work on Friday, don't work on Friday. Like whatever you can do, we'll give you that flexibility. And the reason that I got that wasn't because they were nice, though they were very nice for that offer. It was because I was valuable. And having the value allowed me to create the leverage. So that was the first time that I realized that like doing that gave me a raise. The second time was when I was working in the recording studio and I charged per song, and I started charging per song and I learned how to edit drums really quickly. What used to take me, an hour and a half to do a drum track, all of a sudden took me about 20 minutes. And this is before we even have some of the crazy technology we have now. So what that meant was when I did someone's record, because I charged per song, all of a sudden I didn't need 2 days to edit the drums, I needed like half a day. So I could track the drums for half the day, finish editing them, and we could start the bass tracks the next day, where that used to be a 2 to 3 day process. That alone gave me a raise in that regard. And then same thing with building a website. The first website I built took me probably 25, 30 hours, and I use a front end drag and drop builder. I don't do hard coding because no one's ever right clicked the website, clicked view source code, and went, oh, this code looks really nice. Let me buy this product. Never happened once in the history of websites. So clients don't give a shit about the tools you use. They only care about the result. So when I got really fast, I remember I built my first big website for $6,307, and it took me 10 hours because of the 2 or 3 websites I built prior to. So I was like, oh man, like my next one, I wonder if I can do it even quicker. And what I did was I got these tools and these shortcuts and blah, blah, blah. And the next website took me 3 hours. So what ends up happening is every time that you add efficiencies into your workflow, you, in essence, if you're self-employed, give yourself a raise. And if you're not self-employed, in the instance of my first story, you become more valuable to, your employer. So that's why I really like this thing. I know that that's kind of like a long story to go with all of that, but I like to think in terms of stories and principles of things, not just like, why is this thing so cool? And, push up my glasses and do the nerd talk. Like, yes, there are infinite amounts of programmable macros that you can do for this, which is really cool. They have scenes that you can download offline of other shortcut macro groupings that other people have created, which is really nice. But at the end of the day, the thing that I like about it is it's built really well. It's smooth. It connects on Bluetooth. I can either do it and hold it like a video game controller, like I said, when I'm auditioning my clips. Otherwise, it sits to the left of me, to the left of my keyboard, and I'm able to just use it as a scrub wheel. Even just that functionality has just been really cool. So yeah, this is just something that I've really, really enjoyed playing around with. So at its core, the TourBox Elite is essentially just a physical extension of your shortcuts. That's it. It doesn't edit for you, it doesn't automate creativity, and it doesn't replace actually needing to know your software. Now, what it does is take actions that you already perform and move them out of your brain and into your hands in kind of a quicker manner. For me, it's like kind of getting into a flow state. Now, I can do that with my keyboard and my mouse sometimes. If you've ever mixed music and you've worked with a recording console with faders, we kind of describe being able to grab the faders as almost like reaching out and touching the music. I feel the same way about using the TourBox Elite when I'm editing video. I feel like I can just kind of sink my hands into it. I imagine that it might be something similar that people felt when they would work in analog, when they had to like cut tape and do a lot of things more manually. I feel like we've lost a little bit of that hands-on approach to these things. However, I will say that I'm really grateful to be living in the time period that we are, because I couldn't imagine using a razor blade to cut tape to time drums and things like that. But I digress. So the thing about this is that doing creative work is all about micro decisions. I often say when I hear like an amazing record, I'll turn to my fiance and say this phrase that I always say, which is, there was no bad decision made on this. There were 2,000 decisions that went into this recording alone, and they made all of the right ones. So creativity does work that way. The reason why I like working with tools like this personally for me is, again, being able to kind of reach out and touch the mix, or reach out and grab the edit that I'm working on. Now, creative work is death by micro decisions: undo, redo, nudge, zoom, scrub, adjust, move, change volumes, not to mention all of the color grade work. Now, individually, all these little micro decisions, they're nothing. I mean, it's easy. But when you stack them, the more you stack, the more you get creatively exhausted. Personally, there's work that I do where if I work for more than 3 or 4 hours of hyper creative work, I'm useless. Like, my brain is done. It's exhausted. I can't do anything for the rest of the day. But of course, everybody's different. Alex Hormozy can work 25 hours in one day. So I'll be honest with you, my first week working with this, it kind of sucked. I kept forgetting where I mapped certain shortcuts, and I kept having to look it up. I questioned why I didn't just use my keyboard and my mouse like a normal person. And often I would make the mistake of going and buying somebody else's preset in order to shortcut my learning curve, when realistically, I just needed to sit with this thing for a few hours and use it. Like, use it intentionally, and then it started to burn in of what I should be doing with it. Which brings me to one of the things that I do like most about it. It's very customizable, and because it's so customizable, you can change it to what you want. What I found was I looked at 2 or 3 people's presets, and I discarded what I thought I didn't need, and then I thought about the shortcuts that I really needed. I did some edits with just my keyboard and my mouse, and then I did, like, my 3rd edit with my keyboard and my mouse, but every time I did a shortcut, I stopped and I programmed it in here. And what I found was after a week, I had something that was nearly perfect, and then I moved some shortcuts around, and I've been adjusting it ever since, but I have to say that it, again, feels really cool to work with, but also not overwhelming. Then one day you just stop thinking and your hand just goes to the dial. You don't necessarily remember the shortcut, you remember the motion. And suddenly you're not just editing, you're playing the software like an instrument. In fact, back in the day, me and my friends used to joke and we used to say, "Oh, I play Pro Tools like an instrument." And my one friend Wayne even was like, "Dude, I didn't know you were a surgeon," because I opened up Melodyne once and surgically tuned like this terrible vocal take that came in and just made it sound majestic. But playing those softwares was a lot like playing an instrument because in order to make those creative decisions, we had to be really quick with our shortcuts. And sometimes people would sit behind you and just see how fast you're working, and their minds were blown away. What I've found is that when you have something like a, control surface for recording or something like the TourBox Elite for video editing, and yes, I even use it for the scrub wheel and recording, you end up with something that just feels a little better. I think that's kind of the thing that I'm getting at. I just really enjoy the way it feels, but it wasn't something that was instant. So let's talk about what I don't like about it. So what I don't like about it is the fact that it takes so much time to set up and to get used to. It's not the plug it in and it works right away. Kind of same thing with the Stream Deck. I used that before. And the Stream Deck I find that I barely use because I set it up, I set everything up, and it just didn't really make its way into my workflow. But then there are certain things that I've used where I use it all the time. Like I have the AirStep. So the AirStep is a Bluetooth foot switch controller similar to this. You can program macros in it. And I use it to switch my camera angles when I'm doing webinars or live Zoom trainings or something like that. I'm able to just use my foot to go to camera 1 or camera 2 or camera 3. And that I find that I'm using a lot because it's very useful, but there's no learning curve. But I think that there are things out there that are worth the learning curve, and I do believe that this is one of them. So yeah, so this is my first product review video where I've talked about none of the features. I didn't talk about the price. I didn't talk about any of that stuff. Just kind of told you why I felt that it was useful in my use case scenario, and I hope that some of the stories and some of the teachings that I shared actually do help you. My name's Tom Camp, and I'll see you in the next video. I guess I'm supposed to say like and subscribe or some dumb shit, but see you in the next one.